This interview is a part of the Oral History Project sponsored by the State Bar of New Mexico and the Senior Lawyers Division. I'm Freddie Romero. I'm a member of the Senior Lawyers Division, conducting an interview with 12th Judicial District Judge James Wayland Counts, retired. Today is June 7th, 2023, and the interview is being conducted at the offices of the New Mexico State Bar in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Freddie.
Thank you very much for agreeing to this interview. You and I go back quite a ways.
Quite a ways. It's law school.
Yeah. So before we begin, why don't you just tell us what you're up to these days?
Retired in 2001, I think, in October. We moved from Alamogordo over to Las Cruces and bought a little, just 2-acre. We call it the farm, and it's got some horse pens and I've got 4 chickens. But I've also been doing some pro tem work. A little bit in Las Cruces, and I've got a few cases over in Alamogordo now to do.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
Albuquerque. Grew up in Albuquerque, but I went down to Alamogordo in about 84, 85, and came back for a little while. But since '89, I had been in Alamogordo, and that's where the bulk of my career was.
Well, we graduated in 1981.
Right.
Between then and '84, what did you do?
It took a little while to find a job, but then early in '82, I found a job with a two lawyer firm, and worked with them for a few months. Then I went to what was called the Law Clinic, which was just a low-cost legal services firm. Was there another year and a half or so, and then that's when I ended up down in Alamogordo at the city attorney's office as assistant city attorney. And
how long did you work with the city attorney's office?
I think that was about 2 years. When applying for judgeships, I look at my resume and I tell people I either have you can look at it as I have a vast and broad range of experience, or I just can't keep a job. So, it was just kind of a series of short jobs until I finally landed in a judicial position that I managed to hang on to for a while.
Well, I know that city attorney sorts of work varies across the state. Did you do some prosecution work while you there?
I was. That was my primary responsibility, I guess, was to prosecute in municipal court, and then also just other city assignments. Write ordinances or whatever, do some research and those sorts of things. But a lot of my day-to-day work was prosecuting in city court.
Well, why don't we get into the judgeship? You were on the bench for quite a while. How many years?
I think it was 22 total. I got on in '94. I got appointed in '94, but then lost my primary election. That was the same year, and so I was just kind of a caretaker till December, but then I got reappointed in '99, and then I stayed on until 2021.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of the appointment, the election, that sort of thing?
Well, when there's a vacancy, and the judgeship in '94 was a newly created judgeship. The legislature had just created it, and so whether it's a newly created one or a vacancy by retirement or whatever, then a call goes out for applications. A judicial selection commission is assembled. And that's comprised of the dean of the law school always chairs that, but they're a non-voting member, I guess, unless there's a tie. But the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice or their representative is on those commissions. Somebody from the Court of Appeals is on them. The local chief district judge or their designee is on that, and then the governor gets 2 appointments, 1 lawyer, 1 non-lawyer. The president pro tem of the Senate gets a lawyer, non-lawyer, and the the Speaker of the House gets a lawyer, non-lawyer appointment. Then the judges and the state bar get together and select lawyers from the community, and they need to balance them. At least the major parties, they need to balance them equally on the commission, or get as close to that as they can. So they review the people who have applied for it. Then that committee, from the applicant pool that they get, they make recommendations to the governor. The governor then has 30 days to select one of those names. Or the governor can, one time, ask for more names. Then the commission meets again, decides, they'll call for more applicants if possible. But they can choose somebody who had already applied, or they whatever. But anyway, they can send more names or decline to do so, and then the governor either has to choose from the list that he or she has at that point. If for some reason the governor declines to do that, then at the end of that 30-day period, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, would make an appointment.
Who was governor when you were first appointed?
First appointed, it was Bruce King.
And then
Gary Johnson the second time.
Throughout the state, there is some variation in terms of what a district judge does. In some areas, there are divisions. In other states, they're not. What was your situation?
Yeah, in our judicial district, there was no divisionalization at all. We had 3 judges in Otero County and 1 who sat in Lincoln County. The Lincoln County judge, of course, got assigned everything that was filed in Lincoln County, but then with excusals or recusals, things would roll down to us in Otero County, and so we all had a few cases, but not many in Lincoln County. But as far as the Otero County cases, I and the other judges each got 1/3 of whatever got filed. The only exception to that is that along the way there, and I can't remember what year it was, but the Supreme Court created this idea of water law judges, and so those judges then would get reassigned any cases that were filed in the district involving water rights, and those judges got specialized training. So I volunteered for that. I didn't have any experience in it, but I thought it was an area that was interesting, and so I volunteered to do it. Nobody else was just dying to do it. I was the most junior judge at that point, and I thought, I knew that water law cases could drag on for years and years and years, so I thought maybe the most junior judge ought to be the one to to have that, so maybe I could get something completed. I enjoyed that very much, but other than that, there was no specialization.
So there was no, and just to give you an example, in some areas I know that it's general jurisdiction, everybody gets civil cases, everybody gets criminal cases, but sometimes some of the smaller dockets, like abuse and neglect, juvenile, that sort of thing, get split. All of you all did all of those cases?
We all did all of those, yeah. We didn't split any of those. And, when I first got on, the way that cases got assigned was the clerk's office had a stack of stickies, and they would go through and do Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 on a sticky, and then as cases were filed, they would just peel off the next sticky, and that's how they got assigned. Then later with computerization and Odyssey and so on, they then the computer did that assignment, but the computer was set up to randomize those.
You talk about computerization. What year did Odyssey come into effect for the judiciary?
I don't know. Before there was Odyssey, I was trying to remember what the name of the one before Odyssey. There was one before Odyssey, and then there was Odyssey that replaced it. I don't know. It seems like it was 10 or 12 years ago that Odyssey came in, and before that, gosh, I can't remember the name of that one. But no, that was a big advance. Odyssey was, particularly being able to call up cases in their entirety on the computer screen in the courtroom, and change things a great deal. I mean, like for arraignment days, I'd get a milk crate full of files to haul into the courtroom, and be pulling those out, and then then when Odyssey got up and running, and just call it up on the screen, and then click through the cases.
It's hard to believe that there's some young lawyers practicing out there now that would have no clue about pre-Odyssey sorts of things. What was your experience when you first got on the bench? I mean, what were your thoughts about first getting on the bench?
Well, I mean, it was exciting. When I got on in '94, being a newly created judgeship, and I think different districts handle these things differently, but the judges didn't do a mass reassignment. They just let me take the cases as they were filed, and obviously that meant there was kind of a lag time. I mean, a civil case, maybe many months go by before the judge has to do anything, and even a criminal case, it takes a while before the judge has to do a great deal. And so I really got to ease into it, which was really very nice, because then when I back in '99, when I got back on, that was due to a retirement. That was Judge Bob Doty retired, and he had retired in July, and because of the time it takes to go through that selection process, I wasn't sworn in until November the 5th, and so the docket is set largely untouched for that period of time, and so then you're trying to drink out of a fire hose at that point. Fortunately, I had that prior experience that allowed me to jump in and do that. But I can see a lot of judges get on, and yeah, if the docket has been untouched for a while, that it can really be a daunting experience, I think. But I was just very excited, and I enjoyed it from the first minute. I thought, okay, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing.
Well, we all know that you've had the joy, I guess, of handling some high-profile cases while you were on the bench, some that actually went kind of nationwide on the media. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, probably the case that got the most attention and notoriety was State versus Cody Posey. He was at the time the killings happened, he was 14 years old. He killed his father, his stepmother, and his half sister, I think so. Yeah. And they lived on a ranch out in the Hondo Valley, and his father was the ranch manager. But what really ginned up the attention, I guess, was that the owner of the ranch was Sam Donaldson, the ABC newsman, and so for that reason, probably a great deal, that it got a ton of attention, and so. It ultimately ended up being broadcast on court TV, gavel to gavel, every day. For the trial took 3 weeks, and then sentencing phase took another week, and so that was broadcast every day, rather than a big TV camera that you might picture. They had set up a couple of small remote control cameras, and in the very back of the courtroom there was a guy back there with joysticks and controlling the cameras. But it was intimidating at first, but then I think I and the lawyers, you could tell everybody was just a little stiff, but within half a day or so, everybody pretty much forgot there was any cameras in there, and just went to work and got the case tried.
Was it tried before a jury?
It was, yeah, it was a jury case. The jury convicted Cody of first-degree murder for his sister, second degree for mom, and manslaughter for dad. The defense was that dad was very abusive, and mom kind of participated in that. The stepsister's only sin was that he was afraid she would tell that he killed everybody, and so so he ended up killing her as well. But then the sentencing phase, since he was a juvenile, but he was being, the state had filed notice to try him as an adult. So then the sentencing phase really was: are we going to sentence as a juvenile or sentence as an adult? The question in those cases are really: is the child amenable to rehabilitation or not? If they're not amenable to rehabilitation, then you can sentence as an adult. If you find that there's some amenability to rehabilitation, then you can sentence as a juvenile. And so the week-long hearing was 99% psychologists. The state psychologist saying that he was a psychopath and unfixable and he'll kill and kill again, basically, was the state's theory. Defense theory was he'd had some extraordinary circumstances in his life but not likely to repeat that kind of violence and if he got proper treatment. And so ultimately we went with as a juvenile. So then he then spent till he was 21 years old with the Children, Youth, and Families Department.
And what year was the trial again?
2006, I think.
So it's been a few years since then.
Yeah.
Any idea what he's up to?
I didn't hear a great deal. When he got out, he moved to Albuquerque, and friends of friends and people who knew people, whatever, had seen him. He'd worked in a tire store up here in Albuquerque, I think, for a few years. His attorney was Gary Mitchell, and reportedly Gary had told him at the end of the trial, said, "Okay, go do your time. That when you get out, change your name and leave the state." And he didn't either for a long time. But then it is my understanding that that when he decided to leave the state, he did change his name, and I haven't heard anything. And it sounds like he was doing fine.
Sure.
The times that I heard about him, and it was several years that he stayed in the state, and I'd hear little things, but none of them bad, that he was doing fine, and wasn't out, killing people.
Sure, doing things.
Doing bad things. Yeah.
Well, Gary is known for having represented a lot of individual death penalty cases. Did you ever have a death penalty case with him?
No. I never had a death penalty case. I had a couple of first-degree murder cases. One that it was assigned to his office, but he ended up having two associates try that one. I had a lot of cases in front of me. I worked for a couple of years in the DA's office before I got on the bench the second time, and had cases against Gary. Always enjoyed working against him and then having him in my courtroom. He was one of the lawyers who, there's not a lot of foolishness. There's not pointless objections, and he's real good about getting together with the DA and working out the admissibility issues and those kind of things in advance. And so, you just get to hear the actual facts of the case and then go from there.
Well, other than the Posey case, any other cases that kind of stick in your mind as having been either really difficult or?
Well, another one that, and it was kind of in that same time frame as Posey, was the there was a sheriff's deputy. These two deputies were cruising around in the mountains outside of Alamogordo, and I'm not sure what drew their attention. Anyway, they went to this this little cabin, and there was a guy basically loading a body into the back of his car, and a little girl, a little young toddler girl there in the house. But the guy was reportedly a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, prison gang. Anyway, he had apparently killed his significant other, mother of the little child, and was loading her into the car. Well, when they got there, they come upon this scene, and so one of the deputies went around to the back of the cabin. The other one stayed in front. The one in front heard some gunshots. Then the guy came out of the front of the cabin. They had a gun battle. The suspect was wounded pretty seriously. I think the deputy cuffed him. That's my recollection. The deputy cuffed him, and then ran around to the back and found his partner dead. The guy killed his partner, and so he ran around back and shot the guy in the chest again, and that finished him off. He was probably minutes away from dying anyway, but he got charged with aggravated battery, and he pled to it. So we didn't have a trial on that, but then we had about a week long sentencing, but. What was notable to me, or in my mind anyway, was that there was some rumblings that because this was a Aryan Brotherhood guy, that maybe they were going to cause some trouble in town, and so, the sheriff and the state police had police officers posted on building tops around the courthouse, and we made arrangements that I was going to go in the back door of the courthouse and have a police escort into the courthouse. We cleared the parking so I could just zoom into the back door, and there was nothing. I mean, I never heard of anything, occurring whatsoever. But those were all those precautions, kind of weigh on your mind a little
Sure.
bit as you're, coming back from lunch.
Well, it seems like a bit more in the past few years there have been some concern for security. Federal judges, judges seem to be doing domestic relations cases, those sorts of things. Did you ever have that concern during the time that you were on the bench?
Well, I mean, not in response to any specific threat, but I ended up at one point when I was on Chief Judge's Council, Justice Vigil wanted to create a statewide courthouse security committee, and she appointed me the chair of that, or co-chair, with a magistrate judge, and so I got very involved in courthouse security issues. Our courthouse was a 1955 model. And I always said, it's a 55 model, and so am I. And I've seen better days, and so is this courthouse. It was built in an era where the philosophy was have as many access points as possible, so the public could get in and out as freely as they wanted. Then as security concerns became greater and greater, then the theory was to narrow it down to one main entrance and exit, at least for the public, so that you could control ingress and egress, run people through magnetometers and take away dangerous stuff. So it was very difficult to do in our courthouse, and a lot of the courthouses in New Mexico are the older style, and it's difficult to retrofit them to modern security standards. As a result of that, I mean, I was pushing hard for the county commission to either do a major renovation or preferably to build a new courthouse. I ended up suing the county commission because at one point they imposed a gross receipts tax. They added on a few percentages and to get money for that, and then they seemed to have other priorities, and so I ended up suing them. The end result being years and years and years later, the case never got resolved in court, but the court system and the county have reached an agreement. The county's going to put up a certain amount of money if the legislature would put up some, and I think that some money was appropriated in the last legislature. So they'll be getting a new courthouse in Otero County, I think, within the next couple of years. So.
Well, persistence paid off. Have you, throughout the course of your career as a judge, have you noted, good or bad, the quality of lawyering?
I think it ebbs and flows, particularly in a small town like Alamogordo. It's not a career destination for a lot of people. And obviously the public defender's office and the DA's office, are the big legal offices in town. And so, a lot of times you get young lawyers, maybe their first job out of law school, certainly not looking to make a life in a small town, and or at least not that small town. I don't know, but so they come and go, and some are good and some not so much, and or you get people at the very end of their career, and some of them are fabulous, and some of them maybe should have retired a couple of years before coming in. So yeah, I haven't noticed. I didn't notice over the years necessarily a consistent pattern of things going downhill or going uphill. It just depended on who happened to be in town at the time.
Is there anybody in Alamogordo or actually elsewhere that you would have considered a mentor, being a lawyer or being a judge?
Bob Doty was on the bench, the first time I got appointed, and certainly he was very helpful to me. Frank Wilson was a judge. In fact, in '94, again, I lost my primary. Frank Wilson ended up winning that general election that year, he was very helpful, and I always felt like I could go to Frank with questions, and so he was a big help to me, and he was also on. He was on judicial standards, and so if I had, a question on ethics or, is this going to cross the line? He was always willing to give a extremely informal and always highly conditioned opinion.
This may apply, may not.
This may keep you out of trouble, maybe not. But it was always very helpful, and I always appreciated the opportunity to go and speak with him.
Well, you mentioned that Justice Vigil had appointed you as co-chair of the Security Committee. You've served on other statewide judiciary committees, is that right?
I served on Judicial Education Oversight Board, which mostly, we dealt with the issues of the budget. You go in and approve the budget and kind of give them some general direction. Didn't get into the, for example, didn't do the conclave planning. That was another group of judges and people from the Judicial Education Center. They did that, but I did that. Again, as a water law judge, we'd have an annual training at that, and not really a commission, but it was one judge from each judicial district, so there were 13 of us that got to know each other pretty well.
With regard to the water law cases, did you actually have some that were presented to you that you presided over?
Yes,
Well, at the risk of dating us, we both started practicing law before the advent of cell phones and legal research.
Well, there was legal research, but it was a book.
Computerized legal research. You certainly remember the decennial digests, I'm sure. Do you find, and we talked just briefly about the advent of AI just in a recent email. Do you find that the advent of computerized legal research has helped in terms of the briefing that's provided to a judge? What is your thought on that?
I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know. I resisted computerized legal research as long as I could. But basically, when I got back on the bench in '99, very shortly thereafter, they showed up and took my red statute books away. And they just hauled them off, and I remember, we had a little law library there in the courthouse, but due to budgetary constraints over the years, we had stopped, getting the supplements and updates to the various sets of volumes that we had, and so, I made the comment during the discussion of what are we going to do with that, that basically at this point I think we're encouraging malpractice, to even keep those books available because we weren't updating them. And so we ended up, much to the anger and practically, riot a local bar, we cleaned it out, threw them out, and it was sad, but, computerized research had become so much a part of the landscape that, it really was encouraging people to, look up the law as it might have existed 5 or 10 years prior. And so, we needed to, get rid of it probably. But I got, it's a different skill set, and from old book guys like us, you really have to relearn how to look things up and how to find things.
Right.
And I'm not sure it's better, because you get into those digests and, because they're organized in a certain way, you might go a couple of paragraphs above or a couple of paragraphs below and really find what you need as opposed to where you thought you were, whereas just keyword research is only going to get you so far, I think, so I think you may miss some stuff. So I'm not sure that it's any better. I can't say that it's very much worse. I think it's easier probably to cite things from other jurisdictions, and a lot of times just because I had the New Mexico stuff very readily. I could get the other stuff, but the New Mexico stuff was easier for me to access. And so, if somebody was going to cite something from out of state, I would require that they make me get me a hard copy of it so that I could review it.
Did you have the benefit of law clerks or staff attorneys in Otero County?
What are those?
I knew that's the reaction I'd get.
No, we didn't. We never had law clerks, and my last year or so on the bench, I think we had a staff attorney, but at that point in my life and my career, and I mean, I didn't really feel all that comfortable relying on somebody else to do that follow through on looking at a brief and cases and so on. What I use the staff attorney for is habeas petitions. Because we had the Otero prison south of town, and so we'd get a lot of habeas out of there, so it was nice to have a staff attorney for that. But never had the benefit of a law clerk.
I think that throughout the years there's been some misunderstanding about what a judge does on a daily basis when they're not sitting in the courtroom. Is there actual work going on?
No, I a lot of naps. No, I mean, obviously, if you've got a motion for summary judgment coming up, and you've got a brief, a reply, response, all of which are citing cases. The responsible thing to do is to A, read the briefs, and B, probably look at those cases. It turns out sometimes some people are better than others about accurately conveying the holding of a case, and so one can't just always rely upon what you're told that's what this case stands for, and so that takes up a great deal of time. Writing up orders or doing findings of fact and conclusions of law and those sorts of things. It's not the kind of thing that I ever felt like it was time effective to just tell somebody else to do it, or even I was never very good at dictating and then getting the written product back. It was easier for me, even though I'm a two-finger typist. It was easier for me to just sit at the computer and write up my own orders and do my own findings of fact and conclusions of law, and rather than saying, just adopt these paragraphs and adopt those paragraphs, and it was easier to just type it up, and that obviously takes a lot of time.
Sure. And at some point you became chief judge, is that right?
Right. I had 2 different terms as chief judge. In Otero County or the 12th Judicial District, we had, at least in the recent era, we had a pretty strong tradition of rotating it. The chief judge term was 3 years, and everybody'd serve their 3-year period, and then it would move on, kind of in order of seniority to the next judge. Some districts, nobody wants it, and if one person is willing to take it, they have it for life. I think of Lewis McDonald in the 13th, who I think was chief judge, as long as I can remember, we tended to rotate those, and so I had a 3-year stint, and then when I was next in line, the sitting chief judge retired with 1 year left on her term, so I took her 1 year, and then I had another full 3-year term, so I had a total of 7 years as chief judge.
Did you find that the administrative duties of being a chief judge were somewhat consuming?
Yes, it's and again it's. It calls for different skills, and some of which not sure that I ever really developed. Personnel issues, I didn't like them in my private office. I didn't like them. I didn't like them in the city. I didn't like them anywhere. But you end up having to. You're the final authority on things. And so. When staff comes to you and says, we need to, make this, do this. Either discipline or whatever on some personnel issues, then you had to jump in on that. Obviously, it involved at least once a month going to Santa Fe for chief judges meetings, and then you had budget hearings, before the House appropriations and the Senate Finance Committee, and in advance of the legislative session, and then you had it, and plus you had the way the judiciary does their budget, and they've got the budget committee, so you're up there, convincing them to let you go talk to the legislature about your budget, and then and then once you get the green light on that, then you're up there trying to sell your budget to the legislature.
So you were chief judge twice.
Right.
Okay. Well, was there anything, we've had people tell us that there was a certain event or a certain person that sparked their interest in becoming a lawyer or going to law school. Was there anything like that that happened to you?
No. When I got to be a senior in high school, my dad sat me down and said, "Okay, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna pursue in college?" And my first response was, "Well, I'm going to take a year off and find myself." And he said, "Well, find yourself a job because you're going to start paying rent then, if that's the case." And so I thought, well, college isn't such a bad alternative. And so he was an engineer. He said, "What about engineering?" And that's too much math. And and then what about medicine? That's I get queasy. And then he said law, and I thought about it. Well, okay, I said, but I don't like talking in front of people. I wouldn't want to be in the courtroom. And he said, well, there's lots of different things you could do. He said you could do tax law. You could maybe get a degree in accounting or something, and then go to law school, be a tax lawyer. You're not going to spend a lot of time in court. But it's there's a lot of transactional kind of stuff. And so I kind of thought, okay, that's a plan. And so that's where I headed.
So you got a degree in accounting?
No.
You digress.
It turns out I had no aptitude for accounting whatsoever. I got into the business program, and I started out, and on my first accounting test, midterm, I got an F. And then it was a major struggle to even pass the class. And I wasn't enjoying myself, and I obviously it wasn't coming naturally, and so I thought if I stay on this path, I'm not going to get into law school because I'm not going to have the grades, and so I shifted over, got a degree in accounting. I got a degree in economics. Because I had a bunch of those courses leading up to that anyway, so it was an easy shift. So it just went from an accounting minor to an accounting major, and business became the minor, and then went on to law school. Still with the idea of doing transactional kind of stuff, and never setting foot in the courtroom.
And when did that change?
Well, I've often heard that your first job out of law school kind of shapes your career. So like I said, I struggled a little bit finding a job, and finally got a job in a small firm. Well, obviously that was that involved courtroom cases, and so they had a mixed, primarily civil, but a little minor criminal stuff, ended up in the courtroom there. Then in the law clinic, it was domestic relations and bankruptcies and stuff like that. And so, ended up in the courtroom. So, I went to law school with the idea of never going to court, and ended up spending my entire life in a courtroom.
Sure.
So,
What did your dad think of you becoming a lawyer finally?
Well, I think he was happy enough about it. I don't know. I think he was. I think he was glad that I set out to do something, and I reached that goal. Yeah.
Sure. Did you enjoy law school? I get all kinds of responses to that.
No, I did. It was, it was tough. I thought, but UNM, I thought had a fairly laid back approach to things. It wasn't. At that time, and I don't know the exact year Paper Chase came out, but that created a certain set of expectations of what law school would be, and it was not that, thank God, and so yeah, I enjoyed my time in law school. I was happy it was over when when I reached the end of that, but I was because that going straight through. I mean, I was ready to be out of school by that point.
Well, having been on the bench for as many years as you were, are there any is there advice or any bits of wisdom that you would give a young lawyer?
I don't know if it comes from being being on the bench necessarily. Well, a couple things, I guess. But, one is, I mean, there were various times in my career where I just was not enjoying myself whatsoever. I mean, I spent a number of years in Alamogordo in private practice, solo private practice. And I really didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy the business aspect of it. Just didn't like it whatsoever, and wasn't very good at it, I don't think. Was at times really kind of miserable. So I guess my advice to lawyers: if you find yourself in a job or a career path that you're not enjoying, there are lots of other alternatives in the law. I mean, that's one of the great things about the law, I think, is how many different ways that you can apply that education that you've gotten. And so if you're not happy, look for something else. Look for a change and try to find a different path. I mean, I got into the DA's office. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I mean, that was the most fun I had practicing law as a lawyer, was in the DA's office. And then being on the bench, I absolutely love that. And, so I mean, ultimately, I was very happy with it. Although, there were a lot of years there where I, really questioned the wisdom of going to law school at all, and so on. But ultimately, I was very happy that I'd done that and was able to find a career that was as fulfilling as that. As far as advice to young lawyers, just if you're in that courtroom, A, be as prepared as you possibly can, and B, don't ever lie to the judge. I mean, because you only have one thing to sell, and that's your credibility. And if you lose that, it's next to impossible to get it back. And from that point on, on close calls, you just may not get those calls very often if you've blown your credibility. And so just need to be scrupulously honest. And sometimes when things are messed up or pleadings don't get filed or something, it's easy to blame your staff. Well, your staff doesn't have a license. You're the one with the license. You're ultimately responsible for that stuff. Don't be coming in here and blaming it on anybody else. Just take your lumps and ultimately it'll work out better for you if you do that rather than trying to pawn it off on somebody else.
Well, you're retired now and have a little more time to spend with the family. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, I'm married. We've been married coming up on 30 years. We have two sons. They both went into law enforcement. Their mom wanted them to consider going to law school, and I guess I didn't make it look fun enough over the years, and so they weren't interested in that. But they both went into law enforcement, one of which is now retired from that. The other one is still working. We have 6 grandkids, and so they're all in the Las Cruces area. That was one of the big motivators for moving from Alamogordo to Las Cruces. It's a 70-mile drive or so from Alamogordo to Las Cruces, and we'd burn up that highway going to Little League games and soccer matches and whatever, and it's at some point it just when you're retired it makes sense, hey, we can be right here, I mean it's a lot nicer to go to a game and maybe have dinner with the family and then go home and it's only 9 o'clock instead of 12 o'clock and then have to get up in the morning and work. So it's nice and so our little place. One son bought a couple of horses and he boards them out at our place. So we see them very frequently. The other son just lives a couple of miles away. So it's nice having that closer proximity.
Sure.
And get to be more involved in that family stuff.
Well, if you had to sum up your feelings about having gone to law school, practiced law, and served on the bench for the length of time that you did. What was your whole view about it? What does it come down to?
Well, I think Frank Wilson used to say, that, I mean, being involved in the law is I mean, ultimately, you're trying to help people. You're trying to make things better in people's lives. And when I was able to do that, that was some of the most gratifying times that I had, particularly as a lawyer. I mean, one of the areas that I practiced in was bankruptcy, and it was always gratifying to me and shocking to the people who I think went into it, because most people go into that extremely reluctantly and only when they're under a great deal of stress. I mean, they can't go to the mailbox and they can't answer the telephone because there's little nightmares in there, and once we file for them, and all of that stops, and they realize that life is going to go on, and and it's going to be better because they don't have all of that stress. That was a very good feeling. Domestic relations, on the other hand, I think people go into that with a set of expectations of, it's going to solve all the problems in their life, and turns out it doesn't solve any of them, and they're poorer and lonelier, and so I mean that was always a frustrating area, but even and as a judge, I mean doing criminal cases. When you had to, hand down punishment and be harsh on somebody, you thought, well, okay, maybe it's good for society that I did that. But over the years, I've had, not many, it doesn't happen every day, but I've had people come up to me, in the Walmart or wherever, and say, well, you sent me to prison. And, I had one guy tell me, you sent me to prison, but you saved my life. He said, I was on the wrong path. I wasn't going to change. But you sent me to prison, I missed my mother's funeral. I had a rough time of it, but I realized, hey, the reason I'm here is because of what I was doing, and if I want to have a better life, I need to straighten out. And so, had you not done that, maybe I would not have, turned it around. So, and I've had some people say, yeah, at the time I thought it was the worst thing that would happen to me, but it turns out is what I needed and the best thing that happened to me, because it, got me to change. And so, the law can be a wonderful vehicle for making a positive impact in people's lives, even when it doesn't look like it.
Well, is there anything that we haven't covered, Jim, that you'd like to?
I don't think so. You've been pretty thorough, Freddie. You had me on the hot seat here.
Well, the last comments you made, I think people would really appreciate that. You've had a long career. You've served the judiciary. You've served the community. So we appreciate that. Thank you for your service.
Well, and thank you for your service. You had a long career on the bench as well, and so I think you and I know what each other's been through over the years. Yeah.
Yes, and it's been fun. Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.